Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Now, sorry this is a bit like close in, but I need to be able to read the laptop. So today's Sunday Orchid chat is the answers to the questions and answers comments that were left in a video back in the week, which is the normal Q's and A's way that I do things. So these are like a one-off. I put a video up saying I'm going to do some Q's and A's, put your questions under this video. I'm not one of these that stores up the questions over a long period of time. We do them all at once, which might mean some people miss their chance, but it doesn't mean you can't leave a question on any other video. Of course you can. It's just that we do all these at once and then we can make a sort of thing out of it. And I suppose the good thing you could say is that in theory, given the variety of questions and hopefully accurate answers, this is quite a pool of information on one video. Yeah, that's the idea anyway. So what I will do is I will read each question out and the channel name that actually left the question. You can't see it, but directly under the camera is my laptop on a stand, and I've blown the questions up a bit bigger so I don't have to keep doing that to read them. That's the theory anyway. Okay, let's get going. I think there's about 25 questions. Some will be very short answers, some will need a bit of elaboration. So the first one is, the channel name is Mama Bear 9389, regular viewer, regular commenter. How do I know if my orchid is getting too much or too little light? The age-old question. I have south-facing windows. Well, I'm going to assume you're in the northern hemisphere. It's that old joke, isn't it? Yeah. If you're in a square building with a window in each wall, yeah, and each window faces south, what colour's the bear? Anyway, south-facing windows. And a little scared that may be too much, although I do have an overhang that blocks direct sun in summer. That's good. There aren't many orchids that will take full sun in the summer through glass. It's the glass that has an effect. Right now I have them about 10 feet from south window, but only one of 4 has spiked, so I wonder whether they need a bit more light. Note, these are Phalaenopsis. Yeah, it's about as much information as I could get for the question. That's brilliant. I hope the others are as good. Anyway, what you've got then is the potential for low winter sun to be coming in through that south-facing window, not for all of the day, but for most of the day when the sun is up and out, which is not every day, as we know. Northern Hemisphere winters can be quite dull and miserable. Now, on a dull and miserable day, 10 foot from the window is not a lot of light. It's not far off dark from a plant's point of view. However, low winter sun on Phalaenopsis through glass can warm the plants up quite badly. And because Phalaenopsis have no storage organs, they can evaporate and become a bit limp and floppy under those circumstances. So it's a happy balance. When the sun's out, that's probably, it's not just the sun, you see, it's the heat that it will generate through the glass. And getting the leaves too warm will dehydrate the plants, basically. It could burn the leaves, even in the winter time. So I'd go careful. They are Phalaenopsis, they're not highlight orchids. But however, when the sun's not shining, 10 foot is a long way from the window. If you got a light meter out, there wouldn't be a lot of light getting that deep into a room in a house. So you've got a bit of a balancing act here. It might pay you, an ideal set of circumstances would be move the plants quite a bit nearer to the window, and when the sun comes out, draw some sort of shading across, yeah, that just protects them from that direct sun. So that's that. It is a difficult thing to actually tell whether your plants are getting enough, too much or too little light, but it is very dependent on the plant, the type of orchid. Right, the next one. Hi, my pyloric phalaenopsis has sent up a new spike, but this spike is not pyloric. Any ideas why? Thanks, and that's from Steve Branch 9098. The simple answer to that is no. I don't even know why orchids become pyloric, let alone how to maintain it. I mean, I have one pyloric phalaenopsis, and its repeat blooming has always been pyloric. I've not known that just suddenly disappear, but then I don't know how it appears in the first place. So not a good answer because I don't know. You might have to do a bit of research. But I would think if a plant is pyloric, it's a deformed plant, and that plant is probably going to do that. It should do it every time, but that's more of a guess than a no. Right, the next question is, Roger, can I save my orchid with stalk rot and how? Thank you, Tom. That's from Tom Herbert 6792. Probably not. Depends on the type of plant again, what sort of stem you're talking about. Now on a multi-stemmed Cattleya type or Dendrobium type, one stem with rot, well, just cut it off. Put a bit of cinnamon on the joint. However, on the monopodial types like Vandas, Phalaenopsis, where there is just a single stem with leaves coming off of it, if rot gets into that stem, it's incredibly difficult to stop it spreading. I would suggest carefully put some cinnamon on the areas that feel soft. If it's soggy and wet, the chances are you've lost it. Yeah, but it might be worth a go. Put some cinnamon on the bits that are a bit rotten and see what happens. And don't get that area wet under any circumstances. When you're watering the plant, well away from that area. Yeah, keep it dry, but not the whole plant, obviously. So that's that. Good luck. Personally, I wouldn't hold out a lot of hope, but it's always worth a try. Right. Hi Roger, that's me, I think. Last time I checked. Yeah, that's me. In relation to the channel, how many hours a week do you dedicate to the filming and production and things like replying to comments and managing all of the peripheral activities that maintain your presence here? Just really for some perspective on the workload that goes into what we see on our screens. That's an interesting one. I haven't had that one before, because often on the Q's and A's we get repeats. Not necessarily the same person, I hope, but we do get the same questions do come up quite often. That's a new one on me. Right, I will go through on a day when I'm not going out and I produced a video the previous day. Yeah, because I tend to post normally after lunch, sometimes into early evening, and then the following day I deal with that video. Yeah, and then film a new one. That's the idea. So we'll start from getting up in the morning. Thank you, Mojo, for my fluffy alarm clock. What was it this morning? 10 to 4 this morning. Cheers. He was hungry and he wanted to go out, and you know, he starts yowling and fidgeting, and he walks round and round the bed and walks on the head, and he just as well get up. So irrespective of that time, the sequence of events is downstairs, feed cat, make coffee, come in, fire up the laptop, sit down and go to my comments. That's the first job, is to do my comments. That's why you will often get a reply to a comment at silly o'clock in the morning, like 4:15, because that's when I'm up. A lie-in for me is 5 o'clock or after. So first job is comments. Now depending on how many comments a video gets, depends on how long that takes me. I would say anything from 15-20 minutes to over an hour. I mean, on a video that generates a lot of individual comments, I could be there an hour and a half just doing the comments. So it's very dependent, but it's all done at that time of day. Any comments that come in later in the day get left till the following day. Yeah, occasionally I might drop back in and have another go, but not normally. So that gets the comments out of the way, and After that, I'm putting in time on YouTube watching other people's stuff, but it's not all orchids. That's not my only interest. I do watch other things as well. And this is basically, it's dark. You know, this time of year, it's well, most of the year in the Northern Hemisphere at that time, it's dark. Midsummer, it's going to be getting light, but so there's nothing to do out here. I can't get on with anything, so it's basically laptop time. You know, I watch other things. Sometimes I'll watch a short film about something, but that's not really to do with my YouTube presence. That's just to use up some time. And then eventually we get to breakfast time, and I have my breakfast and my 5th or 6th coffee by then. And then we start thinking about what are we going to do out here. Now, if it's a watering, not every day at this time of year is a watering day. Some days nothing gets done out here. Literally zero, apart from opening the door and letting the cat in and out. So, yeah, we move on to watering. Now, if it's a watering day, the big watering day is when I water all my pots. That's what I call my normal pots, not the shadier, cooler set, which are done on a different frequency. Now, sometimes they both come together, like the last time I watered. My cymbidiums get watered separately, my phalaenopsis get watered separately. So those are the types of watering I might do. The mounts, there aren't many of them. They just get thrown in far more frequently than everything else, obviously. And they will become more frequent, as will all the other types of watering. So we get that done relatively early in the day, yeah? Just in case any water gets on the plants, it gets time to dry. There's some logic there. And then we start thinking about what are we going to film. Now, a video has some logic here. Let's take a half an hour video. Well, if it's a half an hour video, it takes half an hour to film. Well, yes. Got to film it, haven't I? So that's half an hour gone actually filming the video. Yeah. An hour video takes an hour to film. That's just you know, that's just how the filming works. There's very little preparation on my channel. I don't write scripts. I don't plan a video. I just basically decide what I'm going to film, turn the camera on and do it. So I don't, a lot of people can spend a whole day scripting and preparing and sorting out a thumbnail for the video before they even start filming. I don't do that. I tend to go for the more natural approach, and if my worms come out wrong, then so be it. You know, I don't go back and re-edit things and do it again, and very rare that ever happens. I just go with it. So then we've done a half an hour film. That then gets loaded onto the laptop. That's a fast process. An hour's video will take about 10 minutes to get off the camera onto the laptop. Once it's onto the laptop, everything goes fast. It's a high-powered laptop, basically. So those clips are then brought into my editing software, and this is where this can be anything from loading the clips in a sequence and that's it, to actually editing each of those clips. It might need plant names. Well, I've got to pull in the title box, type the title, position it. It might need pop-ups of blooms, which you've seen me do. I've got to go and get that. It's in a folder. I know where they all are. There's no hunt the blooms type thing. I just go and get the one I want, pull it in, position it, size it, stretch it, get it in the corner, whatever I want to do, move on to the next bit. So sometimes the editing can take a while, but I would say even on a complicated video is when I've, something like when I do it properly, everything in bloom, where I've filmed all my orchids that are in bud, spike or bloom, and I put a title on each one, and those that are not actually in bloom, just spike or bud, I bring the picture of what they look like in, if I've got one. Now let's say that's a half an hour video, that editing could take an hour. Yeah? It's a little fiddly. Other videos, they take half an hour to film, they take 10 minutes to process. That's it, job done. And then the software has to produce a final video, basically. It joins all the bits together, rationalises everything and produces a single file which then loads to YouTube. At this point we're at walk away stage, so when I want to load the file onto YouTube I just fill in a few boxes that YouTube demands I fill in because I'm monetized, and just hit the send button, and I can walk away then and just let it run. It doesn't take long at all, and the effort for me is just clicking a few boxes and load. I might have to do a bit of typing for the description, but not much else. Then once it's loaded, I just put it live if I'm ready to do that. See, sometimes I film a video and it's not for today. I've done one, I filmed one Saturday morning. That's not going to get posted till Tuesday. Yeah? So that's just sitting there, loaded, fully ready to go, but it's unlisted, only I can see it. Yeah, and then when I'm ready to actually post it so that you good people can see it, I just go in to the YouTube studio, look at the details and change unlisted to live and save. Job done. So that's the sort of stuff that goes on. Occasionally I do some research into possibly a new plant, find out where it comes from, temperature ranges, highlight, low light, all those sort of things, so that I might find its most suitable position out of the places I've got. Yeah. So there you go. That's the sort of time scales, things like that. Don't think I've ever said about that before. Right, next one. This is from Sheg Grey 4195. It could be She G Grey. Anyway. And this is... Oh, did I say who the last comment was from? Question was from? I don't think I did. Jonathan Matthews -RT9QM. Sorry about that. And this one that we're doing now is from what I've just said. Where is the best place to buy orchids in the UK? I'm a newbie and currently have a few in various conditions due to getting them from the local supermarket. Well, if it's a place you want to visit and physically see orchids growing in a proper nursery, as well as the sort you get in the supermarkets and places like that, then I would recommend Burnham's nursery down in Devon. If you live in Scotland, that's about a 3-day trip. One down, one to be there and one to come home again. Unless you fly, I suppose. Exeter Airport's the nearest one, I think. Then how do you get from there to the nursery? It's not round the corner. But it's a great place to visit. You get looked after there, you get all the help you want. Nice cafe, nice food. Coffee's pretty good. Tea, don't know, don't drink the stuff. Stains the cups. Yes, so that's where I would suggest. Also, they have a very good online service, but I will say not all of their orchids are online. There are a lot of orchids in the nursery that never go online. You have to be there, find them and pick the one you want. And a lot of those aren't in bloom. You just need to know what you're doing. But that's probably the best place. Coming away from actually visiting a place, because there aren't many of those, the others tend to have open days, whereas Burnham's is open virtually every weekday through the year and has an open weekend every month. So, and visits a lot of shows. That's the other thing. Look out for a local show where the traders are going to be. Yeah. So, you'll have to do some work to find it. But there's a lady called her online presence is Pumpkin Beth. So search Pumpkin Beth. Try and find her website. You'll have to navigate it because she does all sorts of different plants and all sorts of stuff. So it's quite a complex website, but somewhere in there are all of the orchid events for the year. Now that will include Orchid Society meetings, which unless you belong to the society are of no use. But it will have all the shows and where they are with addresses, postcodes, so you can find out if there's a show near you. Pumpkin Beth. There's a lot of work goes into that website, but it's not just orchids, there's lots of other stuff. It's an RHS based lady. So that's that. Buying online, the biggest variety of orchids you will find from Spice Exotic as an online presence. They do come out to play sometimes they'll be at a show. They will be at Wisley this coming Saturday, but they don't come out to play as often as some of the other traders like Lawrence Hobbs and Burnham's. But online, eBay, and they have their own website. I don't think it makes much difference where you buy them from. They're the same, they work out the same price, because I think one of them's got free postage, but the plants are more expensive to cover the postage, and the other one you pay for the postage, and the plants are a bit cheaper, I think, last time I looked. But they've got probably the biggest variety online. Lawrence Hobbs also has online purchases, but you don't get to see the plants. It's just a list, so you have to take pot luck whether it's a good plant or not. So that's that. Right, next one. Moving on. Come on, move. Mess me about here. So, I mean, mouse is going mad. Where I expanded the page to be much bigger, the mouse whizzes like, you know, goes at hyper speed. Right, the next one is from Wanda Shaw, 3551, regular viewer, regular commenter. Hello Roger, do you have any tips for preparing your orchids or grow space for spring? You can walk around going, yippee, spring's here. That's what I usually do. Oh, and lovely photos, because that's the bit where I added some pictures on of the show last Saturday. Not really. It's a good time to have a clean up and a tidy up. And if your grow space is anything like me, a conservatory or sunroom or greenhouse, one thing I can recommend doing is clean the glass. It can get really grubby in the winter time outside and possibly inside, but certainly outside. So get your glass nice and clean and get ready for the things you only need in the summer months, like shading. Make sure it's okay. Yeah, make sure a mouse hasn't got at it and bit holes all through it. I've had that. I know it might sound daft, but that's happened to me in a shed. Mice got in there and bit holes in it, and I had all holes in my shade netting. Make sure, as it tends to be repotting time for many types of orchids, coming into spring when the growing season starts, have you got all your stuff? Have you got media? Have you got the right pots? Bearing in mind some plants will need a bigger pot this time round. If you split them, they might need two smaller ones instead of the one they're in. So make sure you've got your stuff that you need. Have a think about how much you're going to do and how much you might need. It's nothing worse than getting, you know, you're repotting 5 orchids like that and you get 4.5 done and you've completely run out of media. I'm not sure I've ever done that because I've normally got stacks of the stuff. I usually got far too much. Mainly because I tend to buy my bark, which is most of what I use, in quite large quantities at a show. So there's no postage, no shipping. I just pay for it and put it in the boot of the car and bring it home. It's the best way to get bulky items or heavier items. So yeah, just have a clean up, have a tidy up, and make sure you've got all your requisites ready for your potting sessions and things like that. And yeah, get rid of dead leaves, all that sort of stuff. Just have a clean up. That's what I would recommend. And check your glass. And watch that sun. Yeah, depending on your environment. I don't need to watch my sun until the end of April, May time, because and then it only hits the roof. It doesn't hit any side windows. Yeah, but in a greenhouse, even at this time of year, at the beginning of March, if the sun gets on that greenhouse, it's going to heat up dramatically. Yeah, so even though it's not summer yet, it's not even proper spring, I suppose it is just about, think about shading from that heat. Yeah, because there's nothing worse than getting 2 or 3 warm days, getting your grow room nice and warm, and then getting a cold miserable spell for 2 weeks. You're messing the plants about. They don't know whether to grow, stop, stall. Yeah, so try and keep everything even and progress into spring on a gentle slope. Right, the next one is just a comment, not a question. And then we've got Gail Cunningham, 1250, regular viewer and contributor. Even gets me a Valentine's card sometimes. Naughty. What do you think of using mycorrhizal fungi in orchid potting mix? I have known people that have got that in and they have said it seems to do some good. Now, it's going to be subjective because first of all there are lots of different types that work differently with different plants. My pine bonsai have to have a certain type in the media or they don't absorb nutrients very well at all. So they would be weak plants if they didn't have that. Now I'm lucky, one of the collected bonsai that I got, the ground it came out of had quite a bit, so I collected some and I maintain it. Every time I repot any of my pines, I make sure that some of that is saved and mixed in with the media. Yeah. As far as orchids are concerned, it's going to work best with terrestrial orchids because of the type of mix. That stuff is not going to survive very well in a bark mix. There's too much air in there. It needs that damp. Think mushrooms, that sort of stuff. Yeah. But I've heard some people have used it and they've said they've had success with it. I haven't. It wouldn't be that suitable for the sort of mix I use. So that's that. So that's a yes. I wouldn't use it personally because I don't have that sort of mix. The next one's a comment, not a question. This one comes up quite often and there's no straight answer. Blimey, it's a big one as well. Right, strange channel name. There's an explanation of what the channel name is, but it's basically ATPLTKI 1340. What would you advise for maintaining orchids when on holiday? Well, do like me, don't have one. I haven't had a holiday. Last proper holiday I had was when I went to visit Rachel in Ireland. Yeah, and well, those of you who remember the videos then, Rachel filmed quite a few while I was there. I filmed quite a few while I was there. It's a long time ago. And that's the last proper holiday I had that was more than 1 or 2 days. I just don't go away. I've got a cat. I've got nobody I can get to look after my cat. The only family I've got are just too far away. They wouldn't do that journey twice a day. They just wouldn't do it. So I'm stuck here for now. Right, so any tips or tricks to keep them watered as required? Train up a neighbour. Intense training required. Otherwise they'll either be too dry or they'll get drowned. Especially if you've got a neighbour who appears to be a planty person, has got quite a lot of house plants, does quite a bit in the garden. They're quite liable to totally drown your orchids because they won't understand this business of going dry in between waterings, and it could be a fortnight before they need watering again. Right, it says better to soak before going and hope they don't rot, or let them dry out and hope they don't desiccate. Thank you in advance. Well, let's put it this way, it depends on the media. Now most people are going to have a bark mix. I'm going to go with bark mix. Now my orchids at this time of year, I don't know how many people go on holiday early spring, a bit late for skiing and a bit early for a sun holiday, yeah, it's most orchids die from too much water, not too little. So they are liable to do better if they get a soak before you go and then get left. Because if they dry out for an amount of time, now if you're going away for a month, well, good luck with that. Most people are a week or a fortnight, and depending on the media, if you give them a good soak before they go, they should go a fortnight. Yeah, they might be a little dry when you get back. Some might be starting to get a little bit limp, but they should just recover once they get watered again. Get them out of the bright light. Get them into a shady area, because the brighter the light, the more they transpire. And get them away from heat if you can. Not too cold for the type of plant, but yeah, try and shade them down, cool them down as much as they can tolerate, and that will stop the rate of transpiration, which is the stuff coming in the bottom of the plant, up through the plant and out through the leaves. If you can slow that right down, they'll last quite a lot longer. But get them out of the bright light and get them somewhere cooler if you can, but not so cool that it actually damages the plants. And good luck with it. You know, you just got to go for it. I don't have that problem. Right, the next one is from a channel called Volvo Safe 4662. I'll agree with that. I've got one. I was wondering whether or not to cut the stringy parts of the roots when repotting Phalaenopsis, or do I just leave them there and cut the lower stringy parts? I'd take them off. Hang on, it says read more. There's more. There we go. How much root can be left to where it will survive with a moss bark media? Right, Phalaenopsis orchids, the roots are large and fleshy and not very bendy. They can snap quite easily. When they snap, yeah, that's not a dead root. It's just a broken root, and it's still functional at that point, yeah. What you're looking at is the root isn't really the root, the bit you look at, that's velamen. It's a coating. It's like a spongy thing that absorbs nutrients and moisture. That stringy bit is the real root. That's the actual root, yeah. Now, when you get the bottom part of a root that's exposed because the velamen's come off, you have to stop and think, why did it come off? And the chances are that root is rotting. So it's heading downwards, yeah, otherwise the velamen wouldn't have come off. It shouldn't just pull off like that, yeah, it should stay there. But as I said, just because a root snaps, it's not dead. It should continue to function. However, it won't last as long as those that haven't snapped, yeah. But just take care when repotting Phalaenopsis. If you've recently bought one and you're repotting it for the first time, you might find half the roots are dead. Just cut them off as near to the base as you can get. Leave as little dead stuff on the plant as possible. Any roots that are firm to the touch, they might be a different colour. They're not necessarily on a newly bought one. They might not all be the same colour. You might have some silvery grey ones, you might have some nearly white ones, creamy coloured ones, even some brownish tinged ones. If they feel firm, then they're still functional. But the older ones tend to be towards the brown end, the newer ones tend to be the whites or silvery grey ones. And leave as many good ones on as you can, take off anything that's not, because it'll just set off trouble in the pot. Because it's going to die, you know. Yeah. So how much root can be left where it will survive in a moss bark mixture? Phalaenopsis in moss and bark, I hope you've got good temperatures, because they still need to dry. They still need that wet, almost dry cycle, yeah. And if you add moss into a Phalaenopsis mix, it's going to stay wet for longer than it would without it. And it is possible in cooler temperatures that they're staying a bit too wet. You know, it's an environmental thing. The visit to Double H that I went on, where they grow them commercially, it's the only commercial Phalaenopsis grower in the UK as far as I know. It's just up the road from me, but it's what you call it, trade only, so you can't visit unless it's a pre-arranged booked thing that we did. But they're growing in 28 degrees C. Have you got 28 degrees C all day long for 14 hours with the right light, with the right commercial feeds? Because if you haven't, your Phalaenopsis are not going to be growing as well as they could do, like all the rest of us. It's very difficult for anybody to achieve those ideal conditions for Phalaenopsis to put on maximum growth and therefore produce the biggest, bestest spikes, because that goes with the strength of the plant. So yeah, that'll do for that one. And then we've got Scott Nurcombe, I think that is, Scott Nurcombe 8678. Roger, I have a zygopetalum. What is the best media for it to grow in? Difficult to say. Most zygos like to be warm. They don't like to get dry, but they certainly don't want to be soggy. So you need something that can dry relatively quickly in your environment, which could be different. You know, I mean, you think I'm growing cool now. I've got 3 zygos. One that's a relatively recent purchase is in pure bark. That came from Burnham's commercial nursery, grown from their own production of seed and seedlings, potted up, and eventually get to sell. They're putting theirs in pure bark. Yeah, and given the temperatures they get most of the time, my other 2 that have got moss in the mix will also go in pure bark when I do mine, which is coming up soon. Those 2 that aren't in bark need repotting. They've been in their pots a while with moss, and moss goes off a lot quicker than most other things. So there isn't a best media. If you've got good temperatures most of the time, including medium warm nights as well as good temperatures during the day, you could stick them in pure moss and they'll take off like a rocket. Lots of people have said they do well in that coir mix or the coir chunks, as they will grow in almost anything like most orchids will, but it's geared up to your environment, your temperature ranges, your light, and how strongly the plant is going to grow in the environment. And the stronger it grows, the faster it grows due to the environmentals, the more moisture you need around the plant, yeah, in the pot. So yeah, swings and roundabouts. Right, next one. This is Jazzy G, 4578, another regular viewer. What is the best pH reading when fertilising orchids? I'll stir up a hornet's nest. I have most varieties. How do I raise or lower it? Oh, that I can do. I know what I use to read it. Oh, I see, I know what I use to read it. So I was just going to say, first thing is get a meter. Right, so pH. The nutrients range that you get, make sure your feed has all of them in it. You can get some feeds that have just got NPK and nothing else. That's no good. Longer term, your plants will go down. Yeah, you need to make sure that calcium and magnesium are there in a reasonable quantity, and all those little micronutrients are good. So the whole lot really need to be there. So that's the first thing. And most fertilizers, I won't say all, given that you're hopefully starting with some reasonably pure water like RO water, rainwater, possibly distilled water, but I don't know how much you'd have to pay for that. But if you're using tap water, you've got nutrients in that already to one degree or another. Now my tap water on a TDS meter is nearly 400, anywhere between 350 and 400. That's stronger than I feed. So that doesn't leave any room for nutrients, does it? It'd be too strong, things like masdevallias and stuff. Yeah, it would just do the roots in. So given that you're starting with reasonably pure water, your pH is highly likely to be a bit less than 7. Mine comes out of the RO unit at about 6.8, maybe 6.9, which is nice, which is very difficult to measure because my pH meter doesn't measure RO water because there's nothing to measure. It whizzes around all over the place. So I have to put a little bit in it so it's got something to work with. But it's it's a pH that's less than 7, but not too much less. And I don't need to know how much less because I'm going to measure it when I put my feed in. Most fertilizers will drop the pH to 1 degree or another. My Orchid Focus Grow that I use for feeding my orchids basically drops the pH a bit. Obviously if I'm mixing up quite a strong feed, it'll drop it a fair old bit. My Dynagrow Bloom drops the pH like a stone. Absolutely. Even though I don't mix that up very strong, it'll take it down to 4.5. You know, ridiculously low. I would suggest that the pH for feeding orchids is anywhere between 5.7, 5.8 and 6.5, 6.6. And have a think about your media, because if your media is in any shape or form a bit acidic, like you've got some sphagnum moss mixed in, yeah, then when you water, doesn't matter what the pH is, it's going to drop, because the pot will drop it, yeah. If it's pure bark, as long as it's in reasonable condition and not getting a bit old and tired, then it won't drop the pH much, but it will still drop it a bit. Even with bark, there's a bit of decay going on, and as long as there's some of that going on, the pH will naturally drop a bit. So what I do I tend to go in somewhere between 6.2 and 6.5, and I do tend to vary it between those two numbers, knowing that when I've watered it in the pot, gradually over some days the pH will drop. So I've covered the range by starting high and letting the pot and the media drop it down a bit. So that's what I do. Some nutrients are better absorbed at higher pH numbers, so the 6.5 would be good for all of those. Some don't get absorbed very well at that pH. They like a much lower pH, more acidic, down near the 5.8, 5.7, 5.8. They tend to be the little ones. That doesn't mean none's going to get in, it just means not as much. So I tend to go with the big ones, the 5, the NPK and the calcium and magnesium. The charts that you will get online if you search, just bear in mind that many of those pH charts showing the absorption rates are for soil. We don't tend to grow our orchids in dirt, yeah, and a lot of them are for hydroponics. Orchids are grown much nearer hydroponic than soil, so those are the better charts to look at, yeah. So that'll do for that one. Next one is Mary Camillari. Is that Latin? 447. Again, comments reasonably frequently. Please can we have more information on your bonsai? No, not on this video. Just bear in mind that I do have another channel. Link to that is in the description of every video, including this one. And it's just coming up to bonsai time of year. I've just literally done my first bonsai video of the year for 2025. There's some repotting to do, there's some pruning to do, there'll be some wiring to do later on, and I always chat about what I'm doing and why, same as I do on the Orchid channel. Yeah, I'd rather do that on the other channel. Now, a quick explanation with the channels, because some don't know what I get up to. I run two channels. One channel, this one, is effectively everything. I still post my gardening and bonsai channels here on my Orchid channel, because there's a relative number of people that like to see them and don't like wandering off to the other channel. Then the other channel is just for gardening and bonsai videos, and that channel stays separate to keep it monetized. It took a lot of work to get up to the monetization status, and by posting there as well, it keeps that channel ticking over so that YouTube don't shut it down. So I've always got a second monetized channel, and that's where I do the garden and bonsai videos. Most of the time they get posted here as well, with a note to say already posted on the other channel. I don't want people watching it and thinking, I'm sure I've just watched this. But that's the explanation from that. Right, just a little bit of an elaboration on theirs, after, when it needs repotting, when to prune, shape it, all that sort of stuff, when it needs to be watered, generally how to care for it. It's presently a house plant. There are only certain bonsai that will grow in the house. If they are native trees, in the main, they will not grow indoors. They will just deteriorate. They don't get the light and the airflow. Yeah. So go steady what you grow. I think Chinese elms, there are some others, but I don't. So I don't tend to take much notice of those. I used to have a couple of Chinese elms that I attempted to keep through the winter outside. And that's because they'd spent their life as indoor plants. They didn't take to the change. If they'd been acclimatised a bit better, they might have done okay. But yeah, I'll deal with that on the other channel, please. Right, I don't know how many more we've got. All right, the next one is Jane Walker, 9786. Hope to say hello at Wisley on Friday. I keep thinking I'm going on Saturday. I hope I remember. Come and say hello by all means. I will be with Lynn because I'm going with her, but we won't stay together for the whole thing. We'll have different things to do. She might not want to do the gardens as well as the orchids, yeah? Whereas I do. And I'm going to have to go very careful doing the gardens this time round. That's not going to take to clambering up and down those rock gardens and some of those steep slopes and that. So I'll have to try and see what I can do. But I want to do some filming round the gardens, not just the orchid show. So you might not find me, but if you know what Lynn looks like from her channel, then she'll know whereabouts I am and whether I'm doing the gardens or not. But I will be missing, we hope to get there for when it opens, 10 o'clock. Or thereabouts, so we'll be there from first thing. First thing I will be doing is looking for orchids to buy. Oh, and thank you again for some more people who've done the Buy Me a Coffee to put into the pot to buy some interesting things to bring home and show you good people. They're all the contributions are going in a single pot for that show. So link to Buy Me a Coffee in the description. Right. So, yeah, quick question. Purchased a range of orchids from Orchid Garden in Poland, which arrived this week. I'm going to assume you're not in the UK, because they shouldn't be posting to the UK without all the necessary paperwork. So I'll assume you're not in the UK. If they're posting to the UK without all that paperwork, they're being very naughty. If they get caught, they'll get clobbered. Most are in good condition, but one bare root cattleya has no visible roots. Yeah, there's a lot of that goes on. How would you promote root growth to sustain what is quite a large flowering sized orchid? Well, first of all, good luck. It depends where it is in its growth cycle. If it's recently, you've got problems with cattleyas, 3 basic types. Yeah, and that can include Lalias and other types that are in the Cattleya Alliance, Brassivolas and stuff like that. Basically, you've got what I call a standard way of growing, where a new growth starts, and part way up that growth, yeah, it starts pushing out new roots. Lovely. There are those that push out a new growth, and it grows and it grows and it gets to full maturity and there's no sign of any roots until later, and then it starts the roots. And there are others that don't grow roots on that new growth for a long time, so the last lot of growth is where your good roots are. Yeah, so you have to sort of plan. You need to get to know the plant. Now you've got a plant with no roots, so you don't know what type it's going to be, but under normal circumstances new growths will produce some roots at some point. Now I kept a cattleya with no roots on the bench, not potted, on the bench for nearly 2 years, and eventually it pushed up a new growth. Unfortunately it didn't take to being put in a pot, so it lasted all that time and then keeled over. But yeah, I mean, selling a rootless plant is a bit naughty, but it happens, and it seems to happen more with cattleyas than any other type, quite honestly. Some cattleyas, the bifoliates, 2 leaves on each pseudo bulb, they tend to be more fussy about repotting at the right time. They are often more difficult to get to root in the first place. I've got one and it's never been good at growing roots. It still isn't. It's going to be blooming soon. It puts up with fewer roots. But yeah, get it in a pot without loads of moisture, yeah, so not moss. A lot of people say, well, put it in moss, it will grow roots. Yeah, well, if it's not in a position to start growing those roots, it'll rot because there's no roots to use up the moisture, yeah. So go steady. But if you secure it in a pot that's bark, basically, water it very, very sparingly until you see the new roots. Sorry, my screen just shut down. I bet that went a bit dark then, didn't it, because of the light from the laptop. It's because I didn't move my mouse. But yeah, it's just one of those, it's just good luck. It should, if it's a healthy plant with, you know, reasonable pseudo bulbs that aren't all shriveled and everything, and it's got leaves, it is still capable of feeding itself through photosynthesis. Yeah, that will still produce some sugars and things to keep it ticking over, and eventually you should see some roots. Not a straightforward answer, that one, I'm afraid. Right, right. Christine Lamont 3756 says, should you stop feeding orchids when they come into spike or bud? Are there special fertilisers for orchids in bloom? No and yes. Moving on. No, we'll go into it a bit more. Any part of an orchid that is growing needs some food. Yeah? Now a spike, if you think what it's going to do, all of that stalk is green stuff. It's growth. It's like a leaf, but it's a stalk. It's still growth. It still needs some energy to be able to do that. Then it's got to produce the buds. They've got to open. And if it's a fragrant orchid, it takes some energy from the plant to maintain the fragrance. So it needs some feed. Now if you don't feed it, it will get all of those nutrients from the plant. Has your plant got enough to spare? So yes, you should carry on. There are special bloom fertilisers. I use one for the cymbidiums now that they're all in spike or bloom. That's not necessary because I've managed all the years I've been growing orchids and getting them to bloom without that sort of feed. I got it as an experiment because the cymbidiums are new to me. So I thought, we've got something, let's give it a try. And if I don't see any difference or I don't think it's worth it, then I'll just go back to feeding them normally. But yes, the production of spikes, buds and blooms uses a different proportion of the NPK, you know, the standard 3 main fertilisers. And a plant, in general terms, will need more of the P at that time. That's also true of a plant producing fruit, not an orchid necessarily, but yeah. So when it's in active growth, nothing to do with flowers, you need more of the nitrogen than the other two. But when it's, you know, it is possible to switch and lower the nitrogen down and raise the P value for producing blooms and spikes and stuff like that. But yes, there are bloom fertilisers around. I've got one and I use it on the cymbidiums. How's the time going? That says 53 minutes. Boy, is that 53? This is going to be a long video. I don't know how many more questions we've got. There's still quite a few. In fact, there's lots. Right, we either speed up or we split this into two. What do you think? Leave a comment in the video. Duh. Right. I'm going to have to split it. There's too many questions to continue. So we'll do another shorter version during the week. I'll just go over, we've just done, who did we just do? Christine Lamont. So we've still got Linda Boxill, Will Air at 26, A Toady, I love that name, Baby, Ninan, JND, Andrea Allam, regular viewer, Michael Peace, Leonard Maver, Neko, and Victoria Jastumpf. I probably said that wrong, sorry about that. So there's actually quite a few still to do. So I'm going to cut it off here. Thanks for your comments. I hope you've had yours answered now if that's what you were expecting. And if you haven't, they're not forgotten. I know where I've got to. I know what's left to do. And if anybody adds some more comments under that particular video, not under this one, under the original one, then they'll get done as part of the next video. And I'm not filming tomorrow, although I might actually film this one and put it to one side, the second part of this. I've already got a video for Tuesday that's already filmed, so I will probably post the rest of the answers on Wednesday. So if you didn't get your answer today, look out for Wednesday's video, yeah, and I'll do the rest of the questions then. That's probably me, I do waffle on a bit, so I've probably taken longer over some of these questions than maybe I should. But it is the Sunday chat. Most people enjoy the longer video on the Sunday. Anyway, thanks for the support for the channel, especially the financial support this time of year. The heating's gobbling up all my money, and I've got a show coming up on Saturday. I don't have a lot of spare, but I do have some donations that have gone in the pot. And then we've got the trip to Mathers. Most of the plants at Mathers at the end of the month, their plants are just too expensive to buy. I probably will, virtually say that I'm unlikely to come home with anything from Mathers, unless there's some miniature cymbidiums hanging around, in which case I might grab one of those. We shall see. And then there aren't any shows for some time after that, so this Saturday is the last real chance to buy at a show for some time, without going online to buy, which I'm not too keen on. I like to see my plant, pick it up, and when they're not looking, take it out of the pot and put it back again. Oh, I did that once at Burnham, made a right idiot of myself, because Sarah was talking to somebody and I was halfway down the nursery and I picked a plant up, and I forgot the floor in some places is like a metal grill. And I picked the pot up and all the bark fell off and made a hell of a racket. Sarah, what are you doing? Just checking the roots. But obviously you can't do that if you buy online. Yes, so there we go. Thanks for the support for the channel in whatever shape or form. Watching the videos. Don't forget the thumbs up. That is important. That does help the channel quite a lot. So do comments. Yeah. Subscribing to the channel, not so much nowadays with YouTube. They don't take much notice of it. It's nice to do, to see your numbers going up sort of thing. But I mean, I'm 16,500 subscribers. Well, on a good video, I might get 1,200 views. So I haven't got 16,000 people watching, have I? So the number of subscribers is not as important as it once was. The comments, the retention and the thumbs up, they're all the things that YouTube likes now. So thanks for everybody that does that and helps with the channel, and I will see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Sorry this has gone on so long, but I'm dragging it out even more, aren't I? See you for part 2 on Wednesday.